guys, welcome back to a brand new episode of the Glow Beyond podcast, and I'm your host, Roy Wong. This is a space where we redefine wellness for skin condition. Today, we have a very special person with us. Her name is Vaneesha. Hi, Vaneesha.
Hello.
How are you feeling this morning?
I'm feeling good. How are you?
I'm great. Vaneesha and I, we have known each other for quite a long time. I think since 2019.
Yeah.
And we met in a safe space community gathering back in 2019 as well. We have been friends ever since.
Yeah, that's true. It started, I feel like it just was so natural, like from the moment we met.
Yeah.
It started as like us being community members, but then eventually, I think because there's just so many similarities and so many shared values, the friendship just bloomed naturally. And I'm so grateful.
Me too. Okay, so Vaneesha, why don't you tell us a little bit more about you?
Okay, so I am a multimedia producer. I am the co-founder of 22 Hub, and essentially all the jargons aside, what I do is tell stories. I love telling human stories especially, and stories of communities that are often overlooked, especially communities like mine, who are chronically ill, who have been oppressed in some way. And the whole idea is to shed a light on our stories while also celebrating our joy while we're at it.
So we have been friends for a few years, and I clearly I have seen what Vaneesha has been through over the years. And recently, she started her own personal page on social media, on Instagram, sharing your journey with chronic illnesses. And so Vaneesha, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your journey with chronic illnesses?
So the shortest version of the story is that I have 15 different illnesses. The slightly longer version is some of these illnesses are chronic and debilitating. So one of it being a chronic kidney condition. I had my right kidney removed when I was 17, and I am a single kidney survivor. I also have psoriasis, PCOS, scoliosis, migraine, and an array of other illnesses that are sometimes complex and sometimes they contradict one another. So it's also about navigating life, knowing that what works for this illness might be bad for this illness. So it's about finding that balance between all these different illnesses as well, and still being a person and, you know, having fun and working and surviving and all of that, like still keeping to my identity through all of it. It is a bit of a struggle, obviously. And the whole part of just finding out that you have an illness in itself, I think it can be such a struggle, because when you don't know what you have, and it's often stigmatized to have these conversations even about chronic illnesses. I think it can be such a journey to even get to this path of recovery. I consider myself still very privileged in many ways, because at the end of the day, there are still ways that I have found myself at a diagnosis and also at treatments that I think in some ways have helped me. But many people go their whole lives not even having a diagnosis.
Yes.
Like, I think for me personally, I probably wouldn't have even gotten a diagnosis for psoriasis if you didn't share your story. Because I came across your post, I think when you first shared, that was in 2017, right? 2018, yeah. So when you first shared your journey and your story, I was like, do I have this? Is this what I have? The whole time people have been telling me I had dandruff, but I don't think it's dandruff though, because it's like traveling to my neck. And, you know, the more that I read about it, the more that I became convinced that I think this is it. And this is after seeing numerous skin specialists, you know, and they always say the same thing. They would prescribe steroids, topical steroids, consumable steroids, and they would say, oh, it's probably just dandruff, you know, I think it would go off in like 2 weeks. And yeah, it does, but it always comes back and it's always worse.
Well, we met in 2019. At that point of time, you were not sure if you had psoriasis.
Yes.
Am I right?
Correct.
And even after that, you were not sure as well.
Yeah, that is true.
And that was like how many years ago? 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
So 5 years ago, maybe you can bring us through your journey of diagnosis when it comes to psoriasis alone. Because I understand currently you have 15 types of chronic illnesses, which we will understand more as well. But I really want to understand, you say that it was very difficult for you to get diagnosis. And maybe you can share a little bit details when it comes to that.
Yeah, maybe I can share a little bit more about psoriasis specifically. How getting a diagnosis in itself was not easy because, as I mentioned earlier, it really was, I think, in my opinion, I think there is a huge gap in terms of understanding skin conditions and also validating it when it comes to like the medical industry validating skin condition. I mean, because imagine I went through my entire high school life not knowing that I had psoriasis. And the funny thing is that all my family members, in every family on my paternal side, everybody has some skin condition that is actually chronic. And yet, so many of us went undiagnosed for a long time. And again, coming to meeting you and your content and, just reflecting upon my body through your sharing and meeting all of you at the Safe Space gathering that we had, and just meeting someone else who has it and asking, do you think I have it? And hearing, yeah, I think you do, was so, as much as it is sad to get a diagnosis, I think it was also so validating, because when you know what you have, only then you can start treating it or start finding ways to manage it, And when I finally got a diagnosis, it was more like I diagnosed myself. I had to be like, so, I think I have this. These are all the symptoms. These are all the signs. I have this, right? No, if I don't have this, what do I have? And then the doctor checked and he was like, oh yeah, you do have psoriasis. And I was like, so this is what it takes, it doesn't just come easily. Even the diagnosis process doesn't come easily to some of us. You really have to know, Yeah.
And I think it's also due to, obviously we have different skin tone. And actually psoriasis presents itself differently on different skin tone.
Exactly.
Do you think it plays a part as well?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think all our different identities play a part, whether it's our skin color, it's our size, it's our gender identity, all these things plays a part into our believability. Like, can someone believe me and take my condition seriously if I have all these identities? And I think it takes a certain level of expertise to also be able to diagnose in spite of different skin conditions, to put your biases aside about what you may have about sizes, about genders, and to honestly treat people for who they are. And I find that very hard to acquire. And I oftentimes find myself in situations where I truly feel like it's such a hurdle to get treated the way that we need. And well, yes, I do believe one of it is skin color and how it presents itself so differently on different skin tones. Psoriasis, how psoriasis presents itself differently on different skin tones. I think also our identities make it harder sometimes to get diagnosed, because if I am someone that you don't respect, you might not treat me the way that someone that you respect might be treated by you, right? Like, if you already see me as someone who is less than you, there is this top-down approach, like you look down at your patients. And sometimes that affects our process of healing, because then you don't get the diagnosis that you need quick enough. And I've heard stories, I've had my own stories, fair share of stories as well, of being discriminated in this way in the medical industry. It's a very arduous journey. Like, you feel very penat, at the end, when you just want to get, all you want to do is get a diagnosis, but you end up having to constantly advocate for yourself through the process. And I know of so many other friends who struggle with this as well. And the reality is that, thank goodness, and also, to some acknowledgement, it is a privilege that I do have light skin as an Indian person. I still am able to speak English. I can still read and educate myself on all of these illnesses. And, when I go in, I can sort of be equipped so that in case of any backfire, I can be like, okay, but this is what I'm going through. So many people, even people in my family, are like, oh, but then my doctor said, no, I have to do lah. My doctor said what? And there's so much of trust in our medical practitioners, which is the reality. Like, it would be ideal for us to have that, right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the reality is that that's not enough, because a lot of times we cannot purely rely on their expertise when they have biases as well. And that's something that I've experienced. So I think some of the ways that I've navigated that is that I have, sometimes I've even pushed appointments when I felt like I was not in the right headspace, because I worry that if I go in for medical appointments when I can't advocate for myself, then I don't get the treatment that I need. And sometimes I go with someone, so either my partner or, my parent, like my mom, someone would go with me so that in case I can't advocate for myself, there's somebody else who can advocate for me. And I don't think that this is ideal, but I think this is somehow a way that I find has helped me to navigate getting treated, getting the help that I need, even when I get admitted, just having someone there has helped me in so many ways. And I'm very grateful that I have that.
I think sometimes we really underestimate the difficulties and the challenges that we go through just to have a consultation session with doctors.
Yeah.
And the process itself can be quite dehumanizing. We are not putting the blame on doctors, but it's actually a systemic issue where the doctors are so stressed out and so stretched out, actually, and that they cannot provide the care that the patients should have, actually. And that can be a little bit traumatizing for the patients to go through. And I think it's such a beautiful thing for you to speak up for it. So do you have any advice for people who are in the same space where they struggle to have a conversation or an exchange with their doctors and practitioners? Do you have any advice?
I think what has helped for me is that I'm very honest about my situation with them. So even when they try to downplay my symptoms, or if they sort of say that I don't think it's as serious as you think it is, I'm very sure about my reality, that I make sure that they know it too. Like, no, but I am very sure this is not normal. Like, I have gone through, pain my entire life, so I understand pain in a way that helps me to advocate for myself, and I think you should hear me out. So sometimes it's really hard to do because we have so much of respect for doctors, and I do as well. And it took me such a long time to be able to tell them, maybe you're wrong. And that's okay. It's okay if you're wrong. Because, part of being intelligent and part of having wisdom is knowing that you can make mistakes. It's knowing that it's okay now if I maybe need to learn a bit more through you. Because all our individual cases are so unique. And something that really helped me to get that was having an amazing urologist. So finding a urologist that was good for me was an entire journey. I was severely medically mistreated as a teenager, put through tests and painful procedures that I actually didn't have to go through because this one particular doctor wanted to make use of my insurance. So when I finally found a doctor who was very different than that, he made me realize that, oh, this is how medical care actually is. Because when he diagnosed me at the time, I had a very rare genetic condition that at the time we didn't even have the test in Malaysia. So we had to send my samples to Australia for testing. Our labs couldn't even test it. But in spite of the fact that he didn't know, so this is him not knowing, right? Because he's never had a patient like this in Malaysia. He was very open to it. He was like, this is the reality. I don't know, and I am willing to learn. If you're okay with that process, I will learn and I will help you. So he went and learned. And this is a doctor who already had 20 years of experience, and he was so open to it. And I think these type of practitioners, they give me hope lah. They're like, okay, so actually there are doctors like this, there are practitioners like this. And he understood that each patient is very unique to themselves. And he was so willing to listen to me. Like, he wouldn't just speak to my mom, he would also speak to me, but it was always very compassionate. Like, if it became too complicated, he would literally draw the diagram for me. Okay, this is your kidney. This is where I go in. This is where we will take. Okay, does this make sense to you? You're confident or not? I'm like, okay. It's like, don't worry, I'll be there with you every step of the way, okay? Yeah, and he wasn't even a pediatric doctor, but he was so good at handling the case. And that was what made me feel like, okay, so I guess I can feel safe. And he gave me the confidence to voice out, to ask. I feel like I kind of got some training there. And because of him, I'm able to see some hope in the medical field, even though it's really hard,
I think the essence of it is really that you feel really cared for by your doctor, which unfortunately, I also started seeing doctors since the age of 14, but it's very rare for me to feel that. And once I felt that with a certain doctors, I would stay to a doctor for a long time. Just to paint a clearer context for Vaneesha's case, so Vaneesha mentioned that she has been dealing with a chronic kidney issue since she was very young, and she got diagnosed with psoriasis, right? 5 years ago, that you kind of like self-diagnosed. And then after that, you actually went on to get diagnosis for a few other conditions as well. So the experience that Vaneesha shared is not just for psoriasis itself, it's her experience dealing with practitioners and doctors since very, very young, which I can totally relate, even though fortunately, I don't have 15 other types of chronic conditions, but I think your voice is very, very important to be heard in this space, and that we want to provide a space where, we can have conversations about how our medical care can improve, hearing from this conversation. Yeah. So I'm very curious, like, you say that you diagnosed yourself with psoriasis when you met me, right? And is it the time where you got access to a community?
Yeah.
The first time?
Yeah, it was. Actually, it was, I think, the first time that there was a conversation around it that wasn't shame-filled and that wasn't immediately aimed towards a solution. Because I think a lot of times when we talk about skin conditions especially, because it's so visible and people can see it, and somehow that makes people feel uncomfortable for some reason.
Yes.
Right? Like they feel like, okay, I think you need to solve it. You need to immediately cure it. Take this. Yeah.
I need to fix you.
Yeah, the finding of I need to fix you. So I think maybe that's why it was hard to have this conversation, because people are already set in their ways. Oh, these are the symptoms that look like dandruff means, okay, this must be dandruff. This must be something very simple. You can easily solve it. Because it's something that makes them uncomfortable to really address and look into beyond just dandruff. Like what causes it? Why is it there? And I think that is one part, but also think it's just a lack of information lah. We don't have enough information to know about chronic skin conditions in general. I think people still think psoriasis, even until today, it's 2024, people still think psoriasis is contagious.
Oh, a lot of people say my condition is scrub.
Yeah,
Right. And people say I don't shower enough.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we're still there. So can you imagine like what it was like 5 years ago, 10 years ago? It's still bad now, but at the very least, I think in some areas we have a bit more awareness. But the point is that because it's so difficult to have these conversations when people don't know much and people are uncomfortable and not open to having this discourse in a space where actually I don't want to advise you, I don't want to shame you, I just want to hear you out. What's up actually? What's going on? What are you experiencing? When we don't share these experiences, it's hard to feel like safe enough for us to reflect upon our own conditions as well. We downplay it because ableism is so prevalent. We are all like, we're all healthy people. It's just small things only. People see disability as something like, oh, only if I have like a severe mental disorder, then I'm disabled. But actually, disability in itself is a whole spectrum though. There's invisible disability, there's visible, there's dynamic disability. So these things, all these nuances is lost. And because of that, that gravely affects first the patient. That's why when I finally saw your content and also came for one of your first sessions, I think that was one of your like, oh yeah, third session, right? So I saw, like I was like following and seeing, oh okay, the first session looks so nice because you were also sharing about the sessions, and I felt a bit drawn to it. I think because it felt like maybe this is where I will understand it better through other people. Maybe this is where I would be able to feel safe enough to talk about it, but more than that, to hear about it from other people, where it doesn't feel like they're telling me what to do or that they're trying to solve my problem, but they're just sharing, and maybe I'll learn something from that. I think there's something very powerful about communal sharing, more so than unsolicited advice. I mean, like more so than people who are trying to fix you, because the people who are going through it will always know more. They will always know more about what that condition is and what it feels like and all it entails, especially in terms of skin conditions where it's never just physical. You know, there's so much more aspects to it, emotional, mental as well. And that first meeting that I ever went to, that was just filled with so many different people with the same condition, but how it manifests in so many different ways. I think that was something that made me feel so safe and also encouraged me to want to figure this out.
That's why my community gathering is called Safe Space.
Yes, correct.
At that point of time, it's called Safe Space. I think you concluded it in a very beautiful way. It's very important for us to provide a space where we have conversation, not focus on advice or solutions. Because when I think a lot of conversation that we have with people around us, it stays on the very surface. Like, okay, there's an issue with you, and I would like to help you to fix it, even though I have no idea what's going on. And I think people are not used to asking. So actually, Vaneesha, I see that you have dry skin. How are you feeling today? Is there anything I can do for you? What do you need? They don't often start the conversation with them. They just straight away go to like, hey, I see you have dry skin now. Maybe you can use this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see this auntie use this cream. Maybe you can use this cream also. Like they already assume that, you know, this condition that I have or you have is gonna go away after using that particular cream or eating that particular herbs or seeing a particular doctor. But they don't often ask what's beyond that. Sometimes when people want to help, actually the most helpful thing that people can do is to ask questions. And not to give advice, but actually ask questions. And I think we managed to do that for Safe Space. Initially, we really want to provide a space just for patients themselves, you know, people who deal with skin conditions, to have a space to actually just express themselves. But because we don't have that, like even if we do express ourselves to people around us, because they don't have the same condition, we don't feel validated. Sometimes how people respond to our expression, it makes us feel like, am I faking it? Am I really like, am I this weak that I feel this shit about myself for having a skin condition? And when you mention being disabled and able, I find myself feeling disabled on some days, but very able on some days, but also very disabled on some days. So how can we explain to people, right? Like, I really cannot today, I will try again tomorrow. And I think our society, when you say that we thrive on ableism, is that the right word? Ableism. It doesn't provide the space for people like us to breathe a little bit. So it's very interesting. I don't know if you feel the same, but during MCO, actually, I felt great.
Because got a lot of rest, right? I don't know when it was indoors.
Yeah. So like for the first time ever, like because ever since when I was young, very sick, I don't know if you can relate. When you're sick, you feel like you're moving in life in a slower pace. And then everybody just like, oh, this person went to university and like got a first class, or this person got a high-paying job in a corporate, and I would feel like, and yet, I still am dealing with this stupid condition. And when during MCO, it just felt like the whole world stopped.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, now everybody can feel how I feel, huh? Yeah, it felt that way. It really gave me a lot of comfort.
I think for me too, because it was a time where the whole world slowed down, and somehow that matched our pace.
Yes.
Like actually, that slowing down is it's our natural pace. It was the pace that a lot of sick people could actually function through.
And there's not much social events.
Yeah, and you know what I think? Actually, a lot of relatively healthy, able people also needed the rest. They needed to slow down. Like everybody reconnected with themselves. You know, they explored new hobbies and they picked up music, apalah, so many things. Like every day I would go on social media and I would see someone doing something new, and they were so inquisitive and curious. You know, all these things that make us so human. I think we also lost so much of that before the MCO. And yes, this is not to take away whatever that was lost in the pandemic. I know so many people lost families, incomes, homes. That's not to take that away, but purely just talking about the pace of life, right? I think we are going full throttle in a capitalistic society, and that's why we are all sick in some way. Like, yes, those who are chronically ill will get sicker, and those who perhaps are more healthy and able will still somehow develop some illness, whether it's mental or physical, because this system grounds you to the floor. Like it grinds you, you know, you don't have the space to breathe and to
actually thrive.
thrive. Yeah, you're just surviving. It's constant survival mode.
Fighting for more, advancing, but not slowing down to take care of ourselves and our parts. Vaneesha, I'm very curious. So, like, I've been building community online since the year of 2018, and you also have you also started your own page to advocate more about, you know, people living with multiple types of chronic illnesses. I'm very curious. Why are there so many people? Because I host community events all the time. I still struggle to find people to attend community events, even though I have 60,000 followers. Why do you think it's so difficult for people to come to community events?
I think in terms of community activities and any kind of communal event, it's perhaps less scary to join virtually than it is to be there physically. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that we have lived so much of our lives hiding this illness, these illnesses that we have, you know, masking, and I think also living with a lot of shame, that coming out is also a process. Coming out with it is also a process. And I think that's a sort of safety net that the screen provides. Like personally for me, I think even when it comes to, you know, speaking publicly, it's still something that I struggle with, because I worry that, you know, will what I say matter? Is my reality worse or better than someone, and will that come into play in a conversation with someone else? You know, am I belittling someone else's struggle by talking about mine, or am I belittling my own struggle when I downplay my symptoms when someone else is talking about theirs? Like, there's a lot of I think worry and uncertainty that comes with being physically there, because we've never really lived in a society where we can easily talk about chronic illnesses. And when I say that social media provides the safety net, I think it's because you don't have to worry about all that. You're looking about it through, you're looking and talking about it through a screen where you can think, reflect, and say, as opposed to being physically there where everything is spontaneous. And we have never been, you know, cultured in that way to have chronic illness discourses in a very casual way. So I think that can be scary for some people as well, when you're coming in person and opening your heart and saying, this is what I have, this is what I struggle with. And that uncertainty, I think, can perhaps make people stay away from, you know, physical events. But one thing I think has really helped me personally is doing the uncomfortable thing. it's very uncomfortable to put yourself in that situation sometimes, but I was so determined to beat my fear that I told myself, it's okay to do it, scared, just do it anyway. Because it's better to know what it's like than to constantly wonder if you didn't let your fear get in the way, what would it have been like? Because if I'm being very honest, our safe space the first time that I came was, I was really anxious about it as well. Like, I was like, should I go? Should I not? Like, my psoriasis is like only at a certain part. Some people have it at more parts. Am I legitimate in my reality or not? You know, that type of thing. Like,
Doubt yourself.
yeah, like, should I be here? Maybe I shouldn't be here. Because the world also tells you that you're not very sick lah, you're okay lah. So you start to believe that also. And just talking about it becomes really hard, you know. And I think in that sense, that's why the spaces that people like you and people like me have created online for people to share, for people to talk about it, for people to just feel seen in the experience is so important, especially because a lot of people's disabilities prevents them from going out. Like, they unfortunately can't leave their houses. They can't be there for physical events. So having this discourse online, I think, has already shaped and has already changed the landscape in itself, you know, for how we see chronic illnesses. At least for me, with my friends, it definitely has. You know, I think the way that they approach simple things like me saying, I think I can't come today. Like, I really don't feel I'm up for it today. As opposed to like, yeah, you always cancel plans on us. Now it's like, okay, I understand. Is it a very difficult day for you today? Like, yeah, it really has been. They're like, okay, I'm really sorry you're going through this. You rest first. If you need anything, you can ask. Don't worry about it. We can always reschedule. Like, they wouldn't know to say that if I didn't first say that this is what I'm struggling with, you know? And I think the reason why I mentioned this is because I think that fear, it permeates every aspect of our life. Whether from attending a communal event to having friendships, to having wholesome relationships, it affects every part of our life when we don't speak our truth. Because we constantly suffer in our body as we try to adapt to a world that's not made for us.
Yeah.
You know? And it's so, I don't know, it feels so like honestly, very refreshing. And there's some relief in being able to just say, actually, this is what I'm going through, you know, like, it's not that great. I'm not really okay, but I'm really trying. So if I can't make it or if I need some time, I hope you understand. I'm not, you know, making excuses, because that's always the thing. We worry that people will think, oh, are you like making excuses because you don't want to hang out, because you don't want to do things with me? Yeah. And I think when it comes to friendships, family and communal events, this ability to communicate what I'm going through and share, I think almost non-apologetically. Like, it's like, I'm sorry that I can't be there, but I cannot be sorry for an illness that I cannot control. That type of thing, I think, has helped me to really learn about myself more. You know, it's helped me to learn about my condition, how to manage it better through the ways that I have let go of fear and made space for learning and growth. Because fear and doubt and shame takes up so much of space in our lives. And letting that go made room for all the other things. And especially, I think communal events have helped me to really find a kind of, I think, clarity in a lot of ways. A clarity about how a lot of other people deal with something that is irreversible, cannot be controlled, yet find ways to manage their conditions. Like, I think what I'm trying to say is communal events like this, they solidify and make it more real. Like
your experience actually is validated.
Yes.
And that you're not making things up.
You're not making
You're
things
not
up.
crazy. You're not weird.
Yes.
Your experience is my experience, and we are the same, and we got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like same, but also sometimes different. But there's something very empowering about being in a space where it is what it is for what it is, and you don't have to hide, you don't have to pretend. And also you're not seen as hiding and pretending, and there is no shame or disgust. It's just a circle of understanding.
Yeah. I understand that over the years, I've known you for 5 years, actually 5 years. And I saw how your health condition progressed over the years. And unfortunately, to be very frank, Vaneesha has been having a very difficult time, right? And honestly, I'm so sorry to hear this. And sometimes I struggle to find the right word to tell you. Like, I can't tell you it's gonna be okay because I don't know. Nobody knows. So personally, it has been very hard for me to accept. It took years for me to accept that I have psoriasis. I always ask myself how my life would look like if I was healthy. And I try my very best to live life in such a way that I don't want to leave any regrets. But I would say that for your case and for many people out there, even though they want to, they can't on some days. And I acknowledge that there's a lot of grief in that. Like, why can't I do what normal people do? So how do you navigate that, dealing with so much of grief? How do you cultivate the joy in your days?
I think it's really hard to navigate life with all these different illnesses, and you are right. It has been a lot to keep getting sick every year, to get more and more sick every year. And there was a brief moment in my life where I did have my symptoms somewhat managed. So I had a life where I could, travel a little bit more and do more of the work that I really wanted. And, to have a taste of that and then to have it all taken away, it's like not being able to walk and then suddenly being able to for a while, and then after a while you can't. Like that feeling and knowing that you had a taste of it, it's very frustrating because I sometimes feel like I'm trapped in a body that doesn't belong to me. Like if I was able to be just a little bit more healthier, I could actually be the self that I want to be. And it feels like my body is holding me back from being that person. Like,
I totally understand.
right? Like I feel like actually on the inside, I'm a very adventurous, spontaneous person who loves doing new things, who loves experimenting, exploring. I have so much of curiosity, but my body limits that. So I think the full extent of my personality doesn't shine. It's very held back,
How do you cope with that?
Honestly, I think I just take it a day at a time. It really is hard. It is a lot of acceptance. And honestly, like I'm trying to piece my thoughts together, but to be honest, it is really hard lah. It is really hard. And I think something that has helped me to cope is I allow my grief and joy to coexist. I used to be able to, I used to tell myself that I have to very quickly feel better. And while that's true to some extent, because our conditions are inflammatory, so we can't also be too stressed. But at the same time, I think that shut down a lot of emotions and my ability to feel. So now I give myself the space and time to slow down, to feel my feelings, and sometimes to even readjust. There's so much of readjustment. Like in the past, I used to get really frustrated at myself when I can't do things or when I'm unable to, fulfill the plans that I have or all the things that I want to do lah kan. But now I think there's more acceptance, and this is where my body is at. This is how much my body can do, and I have to find some ways to be at peace with that. I think having a partner that understands really helps, because even on the days when I sometimes get like that I'm like frustrated at my body or I'm angry at myself, he's always there to remind me that but you are doing your best. You know, this is your reality. It's okay if you need some rest. I'll help you however I can. I'll take over some of the tasks. Like, don't worry about it. We can always try again tomorrow. Like, just that thought, or that hope, right? That we can always try again tomorrow. I think that keeps me going. Knowing that there are going to be bad days, but I've also experienced some moments of joy that makes me feel that perhaps for these moments of joy, I can continue to have acceptance and hold on for the better days. But I do admit, it is really hard to do that when you're in a lot of pain. And that's something that I've been experiencing, especially in this past year. It's been excruciating amounts of pain. And sometimes I honestly just feel like, why am I even here? You know, so on days like that, I think I find one thing to be happy about or to be grateful for.
Just one thing.
Just one thing. Because the whole day is so painful. Like, it's honestly, it's like an 8/10 to 9/10 type of pain, you know? And
like, just for context, Vaneesha also deal with nerve pain. That she's still trying to figure out. So when she says she's in pain, it's that type of nerve pain.
Yes. And I also, because I have PCOS as well, so I also have a lot of gut issues that come with it. And all these different illnesses, they compound, and they do make you really fatigued. And chronic fatigue is a real thing. And unfortunately, chronic fatigue does cause chronic grief, because you are in constant agony. You're constantly worn down. It's very difficult to feel happy through it.
Yeah, because you feel like you're losing so much out of life. When other people, they are thriving, they're traveling, they are performing well at their job, and you're just there.
Surviving and doing your best.
Just to do the bare minimum. Which can feel really, it sucks.
It's really frustrating. Like, just to.
But in you, I see that even though in those painful moments, darkest moment, you still choose to cling on to very tiny lines of silver lining. That you say that, you know, I choose to focus on one joy in my life. I think that is a very powerful practice. Like, you choose one thing to be grateful for, and it kept you going for 1 day, 2 days, right? And I think maybe that's what we need. You know, like, it's a choice to make. It's a practice to cultivate in our lives. And I think a lot of people could use this reminder.
And I think that, and also to allow both to exist. That actually it doesn't have to be either or. Sometimes they can coexist, and one doesn't, your joy is not diminished because there is some grief. Joy is ever prevalent, and it's always there. It's within our hearts as well, even through difficulties and grief. So that's something that I remind myself of. And
I totally agree.
Right? And our own personhood, like who we are in that joy, still exists even through the pain.
And I feel like the more I can create space to allocate my grief, or to acknowledge and feel my grief, the more I can feel the joy in my life. I think it's really building the capacity to feel all emotions across this spectrum. And I think that actually takes a lot of practice, a lot of willingness to choose to face how we feel and acknowledge how we feel and create space for it. And I think you are doing it beautifully.
I think you are too.
How are you feeling now, Vaneesha?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm very glad that we are having this conversation. And I think that I'm very grateful to have this conversation and exchange with you, because I know that this takes a lot of energy out of you to have this conversation. Sometimes the last thing that people like us want to talk about is about our condition that wear us down so much. And I'm just really grateful that you're willing to share your journey.
I think that something else that speaking our truth does for us is that it is very cathartic, and it gives us a lot of peace and I think a sense of belonging to be able to speak to people who understand. And personally for me, I realized that my illnesses have taken a lot of my memory. Like I don't really remember so many things, so many important things in my life that have happened because pain takes up so much of space in your brain. I don't really remember so many things. So now that I'm making an active effort to document all these moments of grief and moments of joy, I can look back at how far I've gone, how far I've come, and like on the days that it's a bit more difficult, I look back at the moments of joy because sometimes in that day there's no joy to hold on to. Like I want to say that, okay, think about one thing I'm grateful for, but in that one day sometimes there really is nothing when you're in so much of pain. So I look back at moments of joy in the past, or I look forward to moments of joy that I hope to experience in the future. And when I'm joyful, I remember, like you said, because when you allow the emotions to exist, you also expand your capacity for joy as you expand your capacity for grief, right? Like you allow joy to exist so much that you really appreciate it so much. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful that today I could go out, that today I could meet a friend, that today I could
record a podcast,
right? Or take a picture, that type of thing. Like you're so grateful for it. Yeah, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to still do that, to still be able to, I think, express myself even through my illnesses. Like I've posted something about this, about how I genuinely feel like expression is medicine. Like expression helps us heal,
It does.
And I find myself being able to be more myself through allowing myself to unapologetically express myself. And I admit there is sometimes, there is still, even now, some voices that make me feel uncomfortable about having these conversations, like, will people understand? Will people think that I am making a mountain out of a mold? There are still some self-doubts, but I think I have come to realize that it really is okay to be uncomfortable sometimes and say it anyway, because the reality is that the long-term effects of not saying it is more uncomfortable. I'm in more distress when I don't express myself, when I don't speak my truth, when I don't experience all my emotions to its full extent,
Yeah. Thank you so much, Vaneesha. This really just coincidentally concluded our episode, actually. Before we end, do you have anything that you want to say to the community?
The one thing that I really want to say is your pain is valid. If the world makes you feel like it's not, I hope that you find comfort in knowing that people like us exist, people like us who talk about it exist. And if that gives you any solace, or if that gives you any kind of comfort, I'm very grateful that it does. But more than anything, I hope it inspires you to, speak your truth as well, and to be okay with not being the same as everyone. I think that's okay. Some of us need a bit more attention, some of us need a bit more space, some of us need a bit more, special treatments. And we are so, I think it's such an Asian culture to feel like we are burdens. But I hope that, the more that you see this kind of conversations and people like us existing and taking up our space, in all that our identity entails, I hope it encourages you to do the same in whatever space that you exist in. And to celebrate yourself through it all, don't hide away behind long-sleeved clothes and, sunglasses and hats, and honestly, like, lock yourself up indoors and away from a world that is worth experiencing, I think, in spite of all the pain. You continue to express yourself and express your joy, and honestly, come for communal events. Like, I would definitely say, if you can, obviously, like, come out, step out, connect with community through people like Rocky and through other people who have communal events. And I really hope that your recovery journey is kind to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Vaneesha.
Thank you.
And I don't know what to say to conclude this episode because Vaneesha already concluded for me. So I hope that this episode has been helpful to you, to whoever who's listening to this. I think it's really time to stop hiding and to come seek support from the community. And maybe what you need is for people who know exactly what you're going through to just hear you and to validate you and tell you that there's nothing wrong with you. You know, your reality is real and you're living your truth, right? Yeah, and I would be looking forward to having more conversations like this. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. And please don't forget to glow beyond your skin condition. Bye.